You've probably heard stories of abandonment, but no matter how often you hear about it, nothing prepares you for the realization that you were the one who was abandoned. My story started the way no one would want it to. When I came into the world, I was thrown into the trash heap, unwanted and unloved, discarding my existence as something disposable. I don't remember this, of course. And how can I remember? But the memories live on in me, replayed through the words of others. The story always begins the same way. It was deep in the night when your screams pierced the silence. That's how the nurse Patricia begins the story. She tells me that my screams were unlike any other, as if I were begging for someone to pay attention, someone to save me. And somehow, through the darkness of that night, she heard me. Patricia wasn't supposed to be there. She was lingering after a long shift at the clinic, weary from the weight of the world, when she heard a faint howl coming from a nearby alley. Something pulled her to that sound, something deeper than sympathy, almost like fate. When she found me, swaddled in old rags, eyes red with tears, she hesitated, not knowing if I was even alive. But then something happened that changed our lives forever. She said I smiled. I don't know if babies can really smile like that, but Patricia swears it was real. In that moment, she decided that I belonged to her. She picked me up from that pile of trash, cradled me against her, and whispered something I will never forget. "You're safe now." From that night on, Patricia became the mother I never had, even though she was neither rich nor powerful. She gave me all that mattered, love. As for my real mother, I don't know why she left me. Maybe she couldn't take care of me. Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe she took one look at my bright red hair, saw something strange in it, and decided I was too much to handle. I'll never know for sure, but the past didn't matter as much as what came afterward. I was alive, and Patricia saved me. That's how my story began. Patricia's life was simple. She wasn't rich, but every corner of our little home was filled with warmth. She loved me with fierce care, as if every moment was a gift she could never take for granted. Yet even in our peaceful world, there was one thing that stood out about me. My hair. I didn't realize it at first. When I was old enough to walk on my hands and knees, Patricia always covered my head with soft scarves or hats. I thought it was just a game, that she was doing it to keep me warm. But as I got older, I noticed the way people looked at me when a single strand of fiery red hair left its hiding place. Eyes widened, whispers began, and sometimes Patricia would pull me away from prying eyes faster than I could say hello. Once, when I was about 4 years old, I asked her why. "Why do I have to cover my hair, Mommy?" Patricia's face softened with a mixture of love and concern. "Anuka, the world can be a scary place," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "People don't always realize that things can be different, and sometimes they're afraid of it. I just want you to be safe." Her answer didn't make much sense to me, but I trusted her completely. "I promise," I said, my thin voice full of innocence. I didn't know what exactly I was promising, but I knew it was important. So I covered my hair. I hid it because that's what Patricia wanted, and she was the only person in the world I trusted. Over the years, my red hair had become a symbol of something mysterious that I was both proud of and afraid to show. Patricia always reassured me that it wasn't a bad thing, but it was different. And different, in her experience, was not always welcome. Still, there were times when I'd notice my reflection in the mirror, fiery strands poking out from under my scarf, and wonder why I had to hide. There would come a day when hiding would not be enough, when a gust of wind or a prying eye would force the truth out. But for now, I lived in the safety of Patricia's house, hiding my red hair and locking my secret in my heart. When I turned 4, Patricia decided it was time for me to go out into the world. It was time for school, a place where I could make friends, learn new things, and see life outside of our little house. I was excited, but at the same time, I could feel the anxiety behind Patricia's soft smile as she helped me get ready that morning. We stood in front of the mirror, and I remember her fingers carefully tucking every strand of my red hair under the realistic wig she had bought, especially for the occasion. It felt strange, like I was wearing someone else's hair, but I didn't complain. I knew why we were doing this. Patricia had been warning me for as long as I could remember, never, ever let anyone see your hair. "It's safer that way, Anuka," she repeated countless times. "Are you ready, love?" she asked, crouching down to my height. She looked into my eyes, searching for any sign of hesitation, but I smiled and nodded, determined to be brave. The school was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. There were so many kids here, all running around in brightly colored uniforms, laughing and calling out to each other. I felt a knot of nervousness knot up in my stomach, but I immediately suppressed it. Patricia dropped me off at the entrance, hugged me tightly, and whispered a final reminder, "Don't forget to keep your wig in place." I promised her I would. In class, the teacher introduced me to the rest of the students. "Class, today we have a new student. Her name is Anuka. Let's all welcome her." I stood, feeling the stares of everyone present, but the wig was secure and I breathed a sigh of relief. The other children smiled, and soon I joined them in playtime, building with blocks and sharing crayons. For a while, I forgot about the wig, the secret I wore. I was just another kid laughing with new friends. But that peaceful feeling didn't last long. A storm was coming that would remind me to always hide. It happened at recess when the sun was shining brightly and the smell of freshly cut grass was in the air. I was playing with a group of kids on the playground, climbing on an exercise machine, when a gust of wind blew across the yard. I felt a tug on my head, a strange sensation, but I was too engrossed in the game to pay attention to it. And then I heard it, a sharp intake of breath. Turning around, I saw one of the children, a boy named Kwame, looking at me wide-eyed. His hand was clutching something that didn't belong to him, my wig. My heart sank. I reached up, feeling the cool air on my scalp, and realized that my real hair, my bright, fiery red hair, was now in plain sight. The reaction was instantaneous. The children around me froze, the expression on their faces changing from confusion to fear. Kwame dropped the wig as if it had burned him, and before I could say a word, there were screams. "Her hair is on fire!" shouted one girl, her voice rising with panic. Look at her. No, they're not on fire." I tried to explain, but no one listened to me. They were all backing away from me, pointing fingers, whispering, their faces contorted with horror. I could feel my cheeks flaming with shame and my eyes watering. I wanted to run away, to hide, to put on a wig and make them stop looking at me like I was some kind of monster. But I couldn't move. I stood frozen in place, my red hair glowing like a flame in the sunlight. Suddenly I heard Patricia's voice, calm but firm. She was a volunteer that day and had seen everything from afar. She rushed to me, hugged me protectively, picked up my wig and held it out to me. "It's okay, honey," she whispered, helping me put it back on. "You're okay." But I wasn't fine. Something inside me had broken. The shame, the fear, it was all too much. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone seeing my hair again. The kids didn't understand, and their reaction left a scar on me that I knew would never fully heal. That night, as she tucked me into bed, Patricia tried to comfort me. "Anuka, you're special, and one day people will realize that. Until then, you just need to be careful. People are afraid of what they don't understand." I nodded, but deep down, I wasn't sure I could believe it. All I knew was that I needed to hide. If a gust of wind could snatch my secret away so easily, I had to make sure it never happened again. The next day, the whispers continued at school, but the kids stayed away from me. I put the wig on tighter, making sure every strand was hidden. No more mistakes, no more chances of anyone seeing the real me. I'll keep the secret. I'll keep the promise I made to Patricia. But even then, some part of me wondered, how long could I hide who I really was? By the time I reached high school, I had mastered the art of hiding. The wig had become a part of me, blending seamlessly into my daily routine. No one questioned it anymore. I had friends, I got decent grades, and life was smooth as long as I kept my secret locked away. But things were about to change in ways I never saw coming. It all started on an ordinary day when the teacher walked into class with a new student. His name was Aid, and I didn't think much of him at first, until I saw his hair. Fiery red, just like mine. It was the first time I had ever seen someone else with hair like that. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. While I spent my whole life hiding this very thing, Aid walked in with his red hair on full display, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And no one screamed. No one looked at him like he was an oddity. Instead, a few whispers passed around, and one of my friends, Emery leaned over to me. "That's the guy I was telling you about," she whispered excitedly. "His family is super rich. They practically own half the town." I glanced at her, trying to appear indifferent, but inside, 1,000 questions buzzed through my mind. How could someone with red hair, the same hair that had made me a target, be so accepted, even admired? I couldn't stop staring at him, wondering if I had just been unlucky or if there was something about his family that made everything different. When the lunch bell rang, I tried to put the thoughts out of my mind, but curiosity gnawed at me. As I sat with my group of friends in the school courtyard, I noticed Aid walking toward us, his eyes scanning the crowd before landing on me. My heart skipped a beat as he approached, his steps slow and confident. "Hey, can I join you guys?" he asked with a smile that seemed to catch everyone off guard. Before I could even process what was happening, Emery, always the social butterfly, beamed and motioned for him to sit. "Sure, Aid. This is Anuka, and these are our friends." My mouth went dry as I forced a small hi out of my lips. Aid's eyes flickered to mine for a moment, and for the first time in years I felt exposed. Did he notice something? Did he somehow know? But our conversation flowed easily, surprisingly so. We talked about classes, music, and hobbies, but I couldn't focus. All I wanted to ask was how he wore his red hair so openly, without a care in the world. Why didn't anyone treat him the way they treated me? As the weeks passed, Aid and I grew closer. We had similar interests, and I found myself drawn to his ease, the way he didn't seem to carry the same burden I did. Yet, despite all our conversations, he never once mentioned his hair. And that silence only made me more curious. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. One afternoon, when Aid invited me and a few friends to his house, I saw my chance. Aid's house was more like a mansion. I had never seen such wealth up close before. Grand chandeliers, polished floors, art hanging on the walls that looked older than I was. It was like stepping into another world, a world where my red hair might have never been an issue at all. As the others mingled, Aid and I found ourselves sitting alone on the porch. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything, and for a brief moment, the tension that had been building inside me disappeared. But the question that had been swirling in my mind for weeks was still there, begging to be asked. I turned to him, my voice soft. "Aid, I've been meaning to ask. Your hair, it's so similar to mine. How do you wear it so proudly? Doesn't it bother people?" Aid's expression softened, and he looked out into the distance for a moment before meeting my eyes again. "My hair?" he smiled, running a hand through it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "It's a family thing. We've had red hair for generations. My mom says it's part of our legacy." Legacy. The word felt heavy, weighted with meaning I didn't quite understand. "Legacy?" I echoed, my voice betraying the confusion I felt. Aid nodded, his smile fading as he leaned in slightly. "Yeah, it's something we're proud of. My great-great-grandfather had it too. It's like a mark of our family's heritage. We've always stood out because of it. In a way, it makes us special." I stared at him, my mind racing. He was proud of it. His family celebrated the very thing I had spent my whole life hiding. And suddenly, I felt a pang of anger. Not at Aid, but at the unfairness of it all. Why did his family treat it like a gift, while mine, whoever they were, had cast me aside because of it? Why had Patricia taught me to be ashamed of something that was, apparently, worth celebrating? I couldn't stop myself. The question slipped out before I could think better of it. "So you've never had to hide it? Never been told to cover it up?" Aid's eyes flickered with confusion. "Hide it? No, never. Why would I? It's just hair. Just hair." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. To him, it was just hair, but to me it was so much more. A secret, a burden, a reason for abandonment. I felt my cheeks flush, but I forced a smile. Yeah, of course, just hair. But inside, the questions continued to grow. I had to know more. Aid's family history was connected to our shared hair, and maybe, just maybe, it held the key to understanding my own past. As we talked through the evening, my curiosity turned into determination. I had to find out why our lives, though linked by this strange similarity, had been so different. Aid's red hair was a symbol of pride, while mine had been something to hide. I was going to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. Days passed after my conversation with Aid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something about our shared hair meant more than either of us realized. I kept turning the word legacy over in my mind, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt like the truth was just out of reach, buried somewhere deep in Aid's family history. My curiosity turned into a relentless need for answers. I started asking questions, digging through bits and pieces of information I could gather from Aid and our friends. It wasn't long before I learned where he lived, the grand estate on the outskirts of town, and who his mother was. A woman of power and influence, someone who never shied away from the spotlight. But there was something unsettling about the way Aid avoided talking about her. I couldn't wait any longer. One afternoon, while Patricia was at work, I made a decision that would change everything. I told Aid I needed to speak to his mother, and though he seemed reluctant, he agreed to bring me over. When we arrived, Aid's house seemed even larger than I remembered, looming over me like a castle filled with secrets. My heart pounded in my chest as we walked through the ornate hallways, my footsteps echoing against the polished marble floors. I felt like an imposter, a girl with a hidden past, entering a world that wasn't mine. Aid led me to a sitting room where his mother was waiting. She sat poised, her long auburn hair cascading down her shoulders, her presence commanding. Her eyes flicked to me the moment I stepped into the room, and something shifted in her gaze, a spark of recognition, or maybe something darker. "Mother, this is Anuka," Aid said, his voice steady but uncertain. "She wanted to talk to you." His mother's eyes never left mine, and I felt a chill run down my spine. She nodded slowly, gesturing for me to sit, though her expression remained unreadable. "What is it that you need to talk about?" she asked, her voice smooth and measured, but there was an edge to it, as though she already knew what was coming. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling slightly as I clenched them in my lap. "It's about my hair," I began, feeling foolish for saying something that seemed so trivial. But I pressed on. "Aid and I have the same hair, the same red hair, and I think there's more to it. I think it's connected to something bigger." For a moment, silence hung between us, thick and oppressive. Aid shifted beside me, glancing at his mother, clearly uncomfortable. But I couldn't stop now. "I don't know who my real parents are," I continued, my voice shaky but determined. "I was abandoned at birth, and I don't know why. But I think you do." Her reaction was immediate. Her face hardened, and her eyes darkened with something fierce, something that sent a chill straight to my bones. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and took a step toward me. "You were supposed to be dead," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. The words hit me like a slap to the face. My breath caught in my throat, and I stared at her, stunned. Aid's face went pale beside me, his eyes wide with shock. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. His mother's face twisted with anger and something else. Regret, perhaps. "I left you to die," she said, her voice cold and unwavering. "I threw you away because you were never supposed to exist." A sickening realization washed over me, and I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. She's my mother. The truth, so shocking and absurd, crashed down on me all at once. This woman, Aid's mother, was the same woman who had abandoned me in the trash all those years ago. She had left me to die. "No," I whispered, shaking my head as if that would make it all go away. But the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The red hair, the way she looked at me, the hidden past I had always been too afraid to uncover. Aid stood frozen beside me, unable to process what he had just heard. "Mom, what are you saying? This can't be true." But she wasn't done. She looked at me with a cold, calculating gaze. "You weren't meant to survive. I did what I had to, but somehow, you made it through." I felt the room spin, my stomach churning with disbelief and fury. "How could you?" I demanded, standing up to face her. "I was just a baby. Why would you do that to me?" Her expression didn't waver. "Because you were a mistake," she said simply. "You weren't supposed to be born. Your existence threatened everything." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of years of secrets. My mind reeled, trying to process the enormity of what I had just learned. All my life, I had been abandoned because I was different, because I had red hair. But the truth was so much worse. I had been discarded because of this woman's twisted sense of power and control. I didn't know how I made it out of that house. The moment Aid's mother revealed the truth, My legs carried me, almost instinctively, away from the horror, out the door, and down the driveway. The world around me felt like it was collapsing. The cold wind stung my face, but I hardly noticed as the reality of my past sank in. I was nothing to her, less than nothing. A mistake she had tried to erase. Aid ran after me, his voice calling my name, but I couldn't stop. My head was spinning, my thoughts a jumbled mess of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How could she do that? How could anyone do that? I had spent my entire life wondering who my parents were, only to find out that my mother had tried to kill me. Finally, I stopped near the entrance of the estate, breathless and trembling. Aid caught up to me, his face pale and stricken. "Anuka, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "You didn't know," I echoed, my voice hollow. I felt sick, like my entire world had been ripped out from under me. "She's my mother, Aid. The woman who raised you is the same person who left me to die." Aid stared at me, shaking his head in disbelief. "This can't be real. There has to be some mistake." "There's no mistake," I said, my voice breaking. "I remember the story Patricia told me about the night she found me. It was her. It was your mother." Aid looked devastated, his hands falling limply to his sides. "But why? Why would she do something like that?" "She said I was a mistake," I whispered, my throat tight. "That I wasn't supposed to exist." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of the truth sat heavy between us, suffocating. Aid's mother had abandoned me, discarded me like trash, and yet here I was, standing in front of her son, the brother I never knew I had. Aid took a deep breath, his eyes filled with sorrow. "We have to confront her. We need to know the full truth." I nodded, my heart pounding. "I want answers. I need to know why she did this." Together we turned back toward the house, ready to face the dark past that had been hidden for so long. The truth was out now, and there was no turning back. The drive back to Aid's house felt like an eternity, my thoughts a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and fear. I was about to confront the woman who had tried to erase me from existence, and though my heart ached with betrayal, there was a strange sense of calm settling over me. The truth was finally out. For years, I had been a mystery to myself, but now the pieces of my life had finally clicked into place. When we arrived, Aid's mother was waiting for us in the same room we had left. Her posture was stiff, and her face was pale, but there was no regret in her eyes. She sat quietly, as if resigned to the confrontation that was about to unfold. Aid and I stood in front of her, side by side. He broke the silence first, his voice trembling with disbelief and pain. "Why, Mom? Why did you leave her to die? Why didn't you tell me I had a sister?" She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I did what I had to do." Her words felt like daggers. How could she be so calm, so detached? I took a deep breath, summoning the courage to ask the question I had been dreading. "What made you think I didn't deserve to live?" There was a flicker of something in her eyes, regret, maybe, or guilt, but it was quickly swallowed by the coldness that had defined her. "You were a complication, Anuka. A reminder of a past I wanted to forget. When I found out I was pregnant with you, everything in my life fell apart. Your father abandoned me, and I was left alone to face the consequences. You were a mistake." Her words hit me hard, but I refused to break. "So, instead of raising me, you threw me away? Into the trash?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer right away, and when she did, her voice was softer than before. "I was angry. I thought getting rid of you would erase everything, but I was wrong." The room fell silent again. I could feel Aid beside me, his shock palpable. This wasn't just a betrayal of me, it was a betrayal of him too. We both deserved better than the lies we had been fed our entire lives. I stood there looking at the woman who had given me life but had never wanted me. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't going to let her define me. I wasn't going to let her actions dictate my future. My life wasn't shaped by her cruelty. It was shaped by the love Patricia had given me. "I don't need your apology," I said, my voice steady now. "I don't need anything from you. I just wanted to know the truth. And now that I have it, I can finally move on." Aid looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness and confusion. "What happens now?" I turned to him, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over me. "Now, we move forward. We don't let the past control us anymore." We left Aid's mother sitting in that cold, empty room, the weight of her choices hanging in the air. For the first time in my life, I felt free. The truth, painful as it was, had set me free. In the days that followed, everything began to change. Aid's mother was arrested for the crime she had committed all those years ago: attempted murder, abandonment, and neglect. The legal process was swift, and though part of me felt a strange sadness at the idea of seeing her punished, I knew it was the right thing. Justice needed to be served, not just for me, but for the child I had once been, the child she had left behind. But even in the midst of the chaos, there was light. Aid and I grew closer, our bond deepening as we navigated the aftermath of the revelations. We were siblings, bound not just by our shared red hair, but by the truth we had uncovered together. We spent long hours talking, learning about each other's lives, and healing the wounds that had been left by our mother's actions. One of the most important steps for me was returning to Patricia, the woman who had saved me, who had raised me with love and care when no one else wanted me, deserved to know the truth. I sat her down in our small, cozy living room and told her everything: about Aid, about our mother, about the lies that had shaped my life. Patricia listened quietly, her eyes filled with concern and love. When I was done, she took my hand in hers and said something I would never forget. "Anuka, you are not defined by where you came from. You are defined by who you choose to be, and you have always been my daughter. From the moment I found you." Tears welled in my eyes, and for the first time in a long while, I let them fall. Patricia had always been my real mother. Not the woman who gave birth to me, but the one who chose to love me. And that love, I realized, was the only thing that truly mattered. Aid and I invited Patricia to live with us in his family's estate. It was a strange offer, but one she accepted with grace. Together, the three of us began to build something new, a family not tied by blood, but by the bonds we had forged through love, forgiveness, and understanding. Living with Aid and Patricia was unlike anything I had ever imagined. The house that had once felt like a fortress of secrets now felt like a home, filled with laughter, warmth, and new beginnings. We spent our days together, cooking meals, watching movies, and exploring the vast estate that had once felt so intimidating. Aid's wealth, once a symbol of distance between us, became something we shared, a resource that allowed us to help others, to give back in ways that mattered. And through it all, I came to realize that my red hair, once a source of shame and fear, was something to be proud of. It wasn't a mark of my mother's cruelty or my abandonment. It was a symbol of survival, of resilience, of the fire that burned inside me. I no longer hid it. I wore it proudly, letting the world see me for who I truly was. As the weeks turned into months, I found peace. The past no longer haunted me, and the future felt bright and full of possibility. I had a family now, a real family. Aid, Patricia, and even the Dep. If you enjoyed this emotional journey of discovery, betrayal, and triumph, don't forget to like this video and leave a comment with your thoughts. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? Share your experiences with us. Make sure to subscribe for more incredible African stories filled with mystery, culture, and unforgettable characters. We've got many more tales that will take you on thrilling adventures, from ancient legends to modern-day stories of courage and resilience. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more captivating tales from the heart of Africa.